What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update. Just a couple of pieces to get through today, starting off with Arne Slot, and reports in Holland are claiming that Feyenoord are making a strong attempt to renew Tottenham target Arne Slot's contract. So we saw Vincent Kompany renew his contract with Burnley. Is Arne Slot set to renew his contract with Feyenoord?
Well, it looks like they're making a good go of it, and it makes sense because he's done a great job there. He hasn't been there for that long either, and he's done a really good job in a short space of time. So of course they're going to want to nail him down, aren't they? They're going to want him for the long term. Obviously, he's being in the Dutch league for how many years he's been there, he might want to move on and look at other European leagues to progress your career, because there's always a ceiling a lot of the time when you're in the Dutch league.
Seems like he does want to move on, to be honest, with the comments that I've heard come out from his mouth, to be honest, in the last couple of months.
Yeah, he definitely hinted at it. So I think Feyenoord maybe giving like a Hail Mary, and it's a good maybe sign, because it shows how much they like him and want to keep him, but doesn't mean that he's of the same thought process. So doesn't mean he's definitely coming to us. I'm sure there are other clubs going to be in for him as well, but I guess if he does sign, that shows loyalty to Feyenoord, and maybe he'll stay there for a few more years, but I'm not convinced he will, based on what he's been saying. Yeah,
I completely of the same thinking, to be honest. I mean, I don't think he will be the next Tottenham manager, because I kind of agree with Sean. I actually think it will be Nagelsmann next season. Touch wood. Hopefully this doesn't jinx anything. But if it's not Nagelsmann, I do think Arne Slot should be definitely heavily considered for the role. But let's move on and let's talk about Lucas Moura now, as Torche Torres, I think he's a Brazilian journalist, says that Tottenham, that Aston Villa, Newcastle and Wolves representatives are said to have contacted Lucas Moura, who will leave Spurs at the end of the season when his contract does expire. He also said that Roma, Lazio and Marseille have also made inquiries for the free agent. So a list of clubs building up for him.
Good clubs as well. Considering how bad he's been for Tottenham, it's a bit surprised that that level of club are coming in for him. But look, I still think, actually, to be fair to Lucas, he does have qualities that he's good at. Obviously, we've kind of moved on from him. Like he was good for a time, but he's become increasingly frustrating, and even when he does start, he doesn't maybe contribute in the final third like he used to. But he is still a decent dribbler. He can still take people on. You can use him as a tactical tool. So maybe managers looking at him and thinking, I can do something with him. But definitely, we know his time at Tottenham, let's be honest, the last couple of years has been really bad, like performance wise. He hasn't been playing a consistent level, albeit at the beginning of last season he was putting in some good displays under Nuno, but then under Conte he was kind of not fancied at all. So obviously it makes sense he's moving on from Tottenham. I do still think he's got something to give, but I just think at the level that we're looking at, especially at his age, we're looking at the future, whereas him getting at 30 doesn't make sense, us keeping him around. But I do think he's got something to give, maybe at a European level.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I always thought that after the end of his contract here, he would just go back to Brazil. That's what all the noises were, that he was going to go back to Sao Paulo and go back home. But now when I see these list of names, I mean, Roma, Lazio and Marseille, I think he can do a really good job at any of those clubs, to be honest. And when you're looking at Marseille, they do kind of like to bring in the players beyond 30 from the Premier League, and they all seem to do a good job there. So I think he still has life in Europe if he wants it, to be honest, in those kind of clubs.
He can probably play in Europe till he's like 34, 35, then go to Brazil and probably still have a few more years. He might also maybe look at someone like Willian, who thought maybe his race was run in England and went back to Brazil. Or where did he go? I can't remember where he went. I think he left anyway.
I think he did go to Brazil.
It
just for a short
Brazil,
time,
yeah. And then he decided, actually, I still got more to give, and he came back to the Premier League. So maybe he's looking at that, thinking, well, he's 34 and he's still playing in the Premier League at a decent level. So there's no reason why I can't. I also think he's probably more suited at this point to foreign leagues and to the Premier League as well. So maybe he's looking at that, thinking, I could get into one of these teams and still perform at a good level.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the English teams that are connected to him, I mean, Aston Villa, Newcastle and Wolves. I mean, maybe Aston Villa, Newcastle, no chance, but Wolves could be a potential
replacement for Adama Traore once he leaves.
Yeah, there's a lot of like Portuguese speaking people there. He'll fit in quite well, I think, and it's probably his level now.
It won't solve their clinical problems,
no.
the shooting problems. But look, if Adama's leaving, which is a good chance of that happening, maybe he'll be a good replacement.
All right, let's move on and let's talk about goalkeepers now, and let's talk about the Liverpool goalkeeper Kelleher. And the Irish Independent are reporting on it, and they say Tottenham are expected to join the race with Brighton to sign Irish goalkeeper Kelleher from Liverpool. Liverpool are ready to let him depart once a club are willing to match their valuation of £20 million. What do you think of Kelleher?
Does sound like optimistic reporting from the Irish paper, in my opinion. Maybe trying to force one of their goalkeepers into a top club. But look, obviously he's at Liverpool. He's number 2. To be fair to him, whenever he stepped in for a second choice, he's not been bad. I don't remember any bad mistakes he's made whenever he's been number 2. And he does play in the cup games. I'm pretty sure he's played. I'm pretty sure he played in the final, didn't he, last season in the League Cup final?
Yeah, I think he did.
So, I don't think he's been terrible. I haven't seen anything to suggest he can be a number 1 goalkeeper here. Why would he swap Liverpool's bench for our bench? Unless we're seriously considering making him number 1. And for 20 million, are we going to sign a sub-keeper for 20 million? Probably not. And are we going to sign him to be our number 1? Probably not. So it doesn't seem like a goer to me.
Yeah, if we're looking for Irish keepers, I much further favour Bazunu, to be honest. I really like Bazunu. Yeah, he is still young, still raw, still learning. But I think when I look at the 2 keepers, I think Bazunu has got a much bigger future than Kelleher.
Probably. I don't see why I would only look at Irish goalkeepers.
No, obviously, but I'm just saying between the Irish goalkeepers.
Yeah, Bazunu's obviously had to be fair, he's lost his place now in Southampton. But I think, to be honest, Bazunu is clearly got talent, but he's also shown, I think, this season he's still got a lot to learn in the Premier League.
Old, though,
exactly,
right?
He's so young. I said he's got talent, but he's still got a lot to learn. So I guess I'd like him as, again, number 2. But again, I don't think he's good enough to be our number 1 just yet.
And last but not least, let's talk about Pedro Porro. And The Athletic have a nice little story on him about him settling in at Tottenham. And The Athletic says that Tottenham insiders have been struck by Pedro Porro's impressive attitude over recent weeks. His English has improved and his presence in the dressing room has grown. The Spaniard possesses an endearing exuberance, which made him also a very popular figure in Portugal. Mason praised Porro's great attitude in the lead up to the Palace game, and that's been something that has struck Spurs insiders since his arrival. Soon after joining, he could be seen cajoling his teammates from the substitutes bench, and as weeks passed, his English has improved and has become a bigger presence in the dressing room, like I said before.
Yeah, that's promising. It's promising signs because coming from a new league, I think maybe it can be difficult to settle in and to assert yourself. And I'm glad that,
especially coming into this squad as well, and the state it's in, and everything going around.
And especially if your English isn't the best, which apparently it's not, and he's been learning it very quickly. So these are all he's clearly got good character. And I think as well, when people talk about criticising him about his lack of defensive ability, it's not because he's not trying or because he's lacking effort or anything like that. In a weird way, it could be the opposite. He's kind of too excitable. He goes too hard into challenges and things like that. And he clearly is putting in lots of effort. He's tracking back. But the problem at the moment, he's a bit weak in he's not strong enough to hold off wingers. And sometimes he can lose concentration, but I do think that he's a player who's clearly trying his maximum, and I do think once a very good coach can create a system with him, allowing him to get forward, I do think he's going to absolutely fly. And I've really liked the quality I'm seeing on the ball from him since he's come into the club, and I think he's already starting to be effective with his crossing and his final third contributions. Once he adjusts that other level to his game, it's good, and I think the more he endears himself to his teammates, that's really promising for the fact that he's only been here a short space of time.
And that over-exuberance that they talk about and that you've been talking about, it kind of does remind me a little bit of Sergio Reguilón, because he was a bit like that when he came to Spurs, just flying into challenges and very over-exuberant in the way he plays and his application and attitude on a football pitch. I think in terms of pure quality, I think Porro wins that hands down, but I think Reguilón was a better defender than Pedro Porro was. So it'll be interesting if Reguilón does come back and we have those 2 over-exuberant guys at fullback or wing-back. But I'm loving what I'm seeing from Pedro Porro. I really am, especially going forward. I think he's a really good character to have. He always seems to be smiling, and he always seems to be trying to G up the fans and G up the players around him as well. So a really good character to have, and I'm loving him part of the squad at the moment. And I think that the worries maybe Spurs fans had about his defensive flaws when he did show that performance against Leicester, and he did have one other really terrible display for Spurs as well. I do think that stuff can be coached into him, and he definitely makes up for it in what he does have going forward as well. So definitely a great purchase, in my opinion. So hopefully he does keep to grow in the Spurs shirt, and we'll see even more from him next season. But that is your Tottenham update today. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any thoughts regarding any of the news stories we brought to you today. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.